The first morning I understood I was free. I was sitting on a plastic chair outside a little rented house in Tagaytay, holding a mug of coffee that cost less than $1. The rain had stopped about 10 minutes earlier. Water was still dripping from the edge of the corrugated roof. Somewhere down the road, a rooster was arguing with a motorcycle. I could smell wet soil, fried garlic, and wood smoke from a neighbor's kitchen. And I remember thinking, this is the first thing I have owned in years that nobody can take from me. The morning. Not the chair, not the house, not the coffee. The morning. That probably sounds dramatic. Maybe it is. But I had spent almost 40 years believing freedom came with a deed, a paid-off mortgage, a garage full of tools, and a lawn nobody else was allowed to walk across. Then I lost the house. I was 69 years old. My name is Walter Briggs. I grew up outside Dayton, Ohio. I worked 34 years as an industrial electrician, mostly in factories where the air smelled like hot metal and machine oil. I was the guy they called when a production line stopped at 2 in the morning and nobody could figure out why. I was good at it, proud of it too. I bought my house when I was 32. 2 bedrooms, red brick, narrow driveway, maple tree out front. It was not fancy, but it was mine. Or at least I thought it was mine. I raised my daughter there, buried 2 dogs behind the shed, replaced the roof twice, put in the kitchen cabinets myself. Every scratch on the floor had a story. Every corner held something I could point to and say, I fixed that. I paid for that. I earned that. For most of my adult life, the house was proof that I had done things right. Then my wife Ellen got sick. It started with tiredness, then dizziness, then appointments, then more appointments. One day you are arguing about whether to repaint the hallway, and 6 months later you know the parking structure of a cancer center better than your own neighborhood. She fought for 3 years. 3 years of treatments, prescriptions, gas receipts, hotel rooms near specialists, co-pays, paperwork, and phone calls where you sit on hold listening to cheerful music while somebody decides what your life is worth. I would do every minute of it again. Let me make that clear. Every minute. But by the time Ellen died, the savings were gone. The retirement account had been cut down to something that looked like a mistake. I had put expenses on cards because I kept telling myself we were one treatment away from turning a corner. I know. Famous last words. After the funeral, I had a house full of silence and a mailbox full of bills. At first, I tried to hold everything together. That is what men my age were taught to do. You do not panic. You do not complain. You tighten your belt, pick up extra work, and solve the problem. Except I was retired, my knees were bad, and nobody was looking to hire a 68-year-old electrician for the kind of work that paid real money. I sold the second car. I sold Ellen's jewelry, which nearly broke me. I sold my hunting rifles, my table saw, my air compressor, half my tools, and the old jukebox I had restored over 6 winters. I canceled cable, stopped eating out, kept the thermostat at 62, started buying whatever meat had a yellow discount sticker on it. I even rented the spare bedroom to a man named Carl who worked nights at a packaging plant. Nice enough fellow, but he snored like a chainsaw and left wet towels on the bathroom floor. None of it was enough. The numbers did not care how hard I had worked. My pension was $1,842 a month after deductions. Social Security added another $1,611. On paper, that sounds manageable. $3,453 a month. But the house payment after refinancing was $1,276. Property tax and insurance averaged another $618. Utilities, medications, groceries, gas, credit cards, and basic repairs swallowed the rest before the month had a chance to begin. Then the furnace died in January. The estimate was $7,900. I remember standing in the basement beside that dead furnace, wearing my coat and watching my breath in the flashlight beam. I had spent my life repairing machines, but that one might as well have been a locked bank vault. I had $412 in checking. $412. That was the moment I knew the house was gone. Not legally, not yet. But in my head it was already gone. I tried everything before I admitted it. I called the lender. I called a housing counselor. I looked into a reverse mortgage, but the numbers and fees made my stomach turn. I considered moving in with my daughter in Indiana. She offered. She truly did. But she had a husband, 2 teenagers, a dog, and a life built around not having her father sleeping 10 feet from the laundry room. I stayed with her for 3 weeks while the house was listed. You are 69 years old, sitting at your daughter's kitchen table at 6 in the morning, trying not to make noise while everyone sleeps. Your clothes are in 2 plastic bins. Your mail comes to somebody else's address. You ask before using the washing machine. That does something to a man. My daughter never made me feel unwanted. The shame came from me. I felt like a burden, like the story of my life had ended, but I had forgotten to leave the stage. The house sold quickly because I priced it to move. After the mortgage, the cards, the realtor, the furnace credit, and all the closing costs, I walked away with a little over $38,000. $38,000 after 37 years. I sat in my truck outside the title office and cried harder than I had at the funeral. That is difficult to admit. Losing Ellen was grief. Losing the house felt like judgment. It felt like the world had examined my whole life and handed me a final score. Failing. For about 2 months, I lived in a furnished apartment outside Fort Wayne. It cost $1,475 a month, plus utilities. The carpet smelled faintly of cigarettes, even though the building claimed to be smoke-free. The refrigerator clicked all night. The window looked over a parking lot and a dumpster. I barely unpacked. Every morning I would make instant coffee and sit at a tiny table, scrolling through news, weather, and videos I did not care about. That is how the Philippines found me, not through some grand plan, not through a travel dream I had carried since childhood. A video started playing after another video. An American man about my age was sitting on a balcony in a place called Tagaytay. He was talking about his rent, his food, and why he had left Arizona. I almost clicked away because I assumed it was one of those people selling a course or pretending life was perfect. But he showed receipts. He paid 24,000 pesos a month for a small furnished house. At the exchange rate then, that was about $420. $420. I backed up the video and watched that part again. Then I watched another one, and another. Cebu, Iloilo, Bacolod, Tagaytay. Places I had never seriously considered, spoken by ordinary people who sounded tired in the same way I was tired. They were not rich. They were not 25-year-old backpackers. They were retired mechanics, nurses, truck drivers, school teachers, and veterans. Some had made mistakes. Some had gone home. Some had stayed 10 or 15 years. That mattered to me. I did not need paradise. I needed evidence. I spent the next 6 weeks researching like my life depended on it, because in a way, it did. I joined expat groups, read arguments about visas, hospitals, dating, scams, traffic, humidity, banking, and whether one brand of instant coffee was better than another. I watched videos from people who loved the country and people who seemed angry at everything. I made a spreadsheet. Of course I made a spreadsheet. I was an electrician. I listed rent, utilities, insurance, food, transportation, visa extensions, flights home, and emergency funds. I added 20% because old men who do not add 20% end up learning expensive lessons. I called my daughter and told her I was thinking about visiting for 2 months. There was a long pause. Then she said, "Dad, are you sure this isn't grief talking?" Fair question. I told her I was not sure of anything anymore, but I knew I could not spend the rest of my life watching a parking lot from a rented chair. I booked a one-way ticket with a fully changeable return option. When I landed in Manila, I was exhausted, sweaty, and immediately convinced I had made a terrible mistake. The airport felt louder than any place I had been in years. People moving in every direction. Drivers calling out, phones ringing, engines idling, heat settling on my shoulders like a wet blanket. I had arranged a car to Tagaytay because 3 different people online warned me not to improvise transportation after a long flight. That may have been the best advice I received. The city slowly gave way to greener roads. The air cooled as we climbed. I saw fruit stands, concrete houses painted pink and blue, children in uniforms, dogs sleeping beside sari-sari stores, and clouds hanging low over the hills. My first rental was a small furnished house behind a family compound. The rent was 22,000 pesos a month, about $385 at the time. It had 1 bedroom, a tiled living area, a little kitchen with a 2-burner stove, and a covered porch barely wide enough for 2 plastic chairs. The shower had an electric heater mounted on the wall. The mattress was harder than anything I had slept on since the army. The first night, a gecko barked somewhere above my bed. I did not know geckos barked. I nearly called the landlord because I thought there was a bird trapped in the ceiling. The next morning, the landlord's sister brought me a plate of garlic rice, eggs, and longanisa. She had heard I arrived late and assumed I would not have food. She would not take money for it. That small kindness hit me harder than it should have. Back home, I had spent months trying not to inconvenience anyone. Here, a woman who barely knew my name was worried I might miss breakfast. I did not suddenly become happy. That is not how grief works. For the first few weeks, I felt out of place almost everywhere. I spoke too quietly for busy restaurants. I misunderstood prices. I got into the wrong jeepney once and ended up 20 minutes in the opposite direction. I bought what I thought was milk and discovered it was sweetened creamer after pouring half a glass. I sweated constantly. I missed decent rye bread. I missed driving roads where lane markings seemed to be more than suggestions. And some nights I missed Ellen so badly I could not breathe. But my money stopped disappearing. That changed everything. My rent was $385. Electricity averaged $72. A little higher when I used the air conditioner more. Water was under $10. My phone and internet together were about $38. Fresh vegetables, rice, eggs, chicken, fruit, and coffee cost less than I had been spending on discounted groceries in Indiana. I bought health coverage designed for expats and kept a separate emergency account. Even after eating out several times a week, paying for transportation, and setting money aside for flights, I was living on less than $1,600 a month, less than half my income. For the first time since Ellen got sick, I finished a month with more money than I started with. I stared at the bank screen for a long time. It was not a fortune. It was breathing room. There is a difference. Back in Ohio, every strange noise in the house had a price attached to it. A drip meant plumbing. A draft meant windows. A crack meant foundation. The maple tree needed trimming. The driveway needed sealing. The gutters needed cleaning. The tax bill always came. The insurance always rose. I had called that ownership. But toward the end, it felt like being employed by a building. In Tagaytay, when the sink leaked, I texted the landlord. A man arrived that afternoon, replaced a fitting, drank a glass of water, and left. No invoice, no emergency credit card, no weekend ruined. That was when I began to understand what had happened. Losing the house had humiliated me because I believed the house was the evidence of my worth. Without it, I thought I had become less of a man. But sitting on that porch, I realized the house had also become the thing I served. I had protected it, repaired it, financed it, insured it, heated it, cooled it, and filled it with objects, because empty rooms made me feel like I had failed. Then one day the objects were gone, the rooms belonged to somebody else, and I was still here. Still Walter, still a father, still a man who could fix a loose wire, make a decent pot of chili, tell a bad joke, and remember every word to songs nobody played anymore. I had confused what I owned with who I was. The Philippines did not magically teach me that. Losing everything taught me. The Philippines simply gave me a quiet enough life to hear the lesson. I stayed beyond the original 2 months, then 6 months, then a year. I moved to a slightly better house, still in Tagaytay, for 26,500 pesos a month, about $460. It has a small garden, a covered outdoor area, and a view of mist rolling across the ridge in the early morning. My daughter visited last February. She walked into the house, looked around, and said, "Dad, this is smaller than your old garage." I laughed because she was right. Then she spent a week watching me talk to neighbors, buy fruit from the same woman each morning, and share coffee with a retired Australian 2 streets over. She saw that people knew me. She saw that I had routines. She saw that I was not hiding from life. On her last night, we sat outside while rain tapped on the metal roof. She said, "You seem lighter." That word stayed with me. Lighter. Not richer, not younger, not healed. Lighter. I still think about the old house. Sometimes I dream I am walking through it and Ellen is in the kitchen asking where I put the good scissors. In the dream, I know I am going to lose the house, but I cannot tell her. I wake up with my chest hurting. Freedom does not mean you stop missing what you loved. It means the loss no longer gets to decide what happens next. I am careful when I talk about moving abroad because I have seen people arrive with fantasies. They think cheap rent fixes loneliness. They think a younger girlfriend proves they are still important. They think every friendly person is family, and every business idea is guaranteed. That is how people get hurt. You bring yourself with you. Your fear comes through immigration right beside you. Your bad habits fit in the overhead bin. Your grief does not need a visa. And this country is not cheap in every way. Imported food can be expensive. Medical care can become complicated. Flights home cost real money. Bureaucracy requires patience. Heat, traffic, noise, and cultural misunderstandings can wear you down. I am not telling anyone to sell everything and get on a plane tomorrow. I am saying there may be a difference between the life you were told to protect and the life that actually protects you. For me, the old life looked secure from the outside. Brick house, paid-up truck, tools in the garage. 37 years at one address. Inside, I was terrified every day. Terrified of the next bill. Terrified of needing help. Terrified my daughter would have to rescue me. Terrified that losing the house meant losing my place in the world. Now I rent. I own less than I did at 25. My clothes fit in one wardrobe. My important papers fit in a small lockbox. I have one good watch, one laptop, a box of photographs, and the pocket knife Ellen gave me on our 25th anniversary. That is enough. More than enough most days. My pension arrives, my bills are paid. Money goes into savings. I help my daughter when the grandkids need something. I eat breakfast outside. I walk in the late afternoon when the air cools. I know which market has the best mangoes and which pharmacy keeps my blood pressure medicine in stock. I am not wealthy. I am not on vacation. I am living. There's a small difference in the way people ask about your day here. Maybe it is cultural. Maybe it is because life happens outside more. Neighbors notice when your porch light is not on. Somebody asks if you are sick. Somebody sends soup. Somebody tells you the water will be off before you discover it yourself. That kind of attention can feel strange when you have spent years trying to disappear politely. It also feels like belonging. I used to believe freedom was having nobody tell me what to do. Now I think freedom is waking up without fear, sitting on the edge of the bed before your feet touch the floor. Freedom is not calculating whether you can afford to turn up the heat. Freedom is not pretending to be fine so your children do not worry. Freedom is having enough room in your life for another person to matter. This morning I sat outside with my coffee while water dripped from the roof. The same rooster was making the same ridiculous noise. A motorcycle passed. Somebody nearby was frying garlic. The chair was cheap. The house was rented. The mug had a crack near the handle. None of it was mine forever. And for the first time in my life, that did not frighten me. It comforted me. Because I finally understood that forever was never something a deed could promise. Ellen taught me that. The house taught me that. Losing both nearly destroyed me. But at 69 years old, in a country I once could not have found on a blank map, I learned that a man can lose the walls around his life without losing the life inside them. I thought losing my home was the end of my story. It turned out to be the first time I was free enough to write the next part.